Hello, welcome all to the BS Takes podcast. I'm your host, Blake Bartlett. This is episode 1, and we have a lot of new stories and old stories to cover today in the world of sports. So, not so recent news, but some big news in the NFL. Pat Mahomes signed a $500 million 10-year extension. In fact, it's actually $503 million onto his already 2-year left contract. He had a rookie year contract, 5th year, and then he also had 1-year extension worth probably like $24 million. And then after that is when the 10-year extension will hit. So Pat Mahomes is now joining this, and I don't know if I would say it's an elite group, but he's joining this group of quarterbacks who have all signed 10-year or longer extensions. Now, there's only 5 other quarterbacks who have done this. I'm going to go through the list here. You've got Brett Favre, who signed a 10-year extension worth $100 million in 2001, and he was 32 years old when he did that, which is a little bit less comparable to Pat Mahomes because he'll be 26 when his deal hits. So Brett Favre was a little bit older, but ultimately he was shipped to the Jets and replaced by Aaron Rodgers back in 2008. So not a bad quarterback to get as your replacement. Another quarterback on this list, in fact, all of them are quarterbacks. Drew Bledsoe, he signed a 10-year extension with the Patriots worth $103 million in 2001. He was 29 years old at the time, so I guess a little bit more comparable. I'd still say he's old because that 29 to 39-year-old contract, you don't really expect someone to play through all that. But he was replaced by Tom Brady after Drew went down with an injury, so didn't really get to live up to that contract. Now, Donovan McNabb, 12-year extension with the Eagles for $115 million back in 2002. And this deal is actually a lot more comparable other than the other ones because he was 26 when he signed that deal, which is about, if not about, it is the exact same age that Pat Mahomes will be when his contract hits. Except he was traded to the Redskins 8 years later, so he did not play out that full contract. Dante Culpepper, he signed a 10-year deal worth $102 million in 2003. He was also 26 years old, so again, very comparable to Pat Mahomes. Except for him, 2 seasons into his 10-year extension, he did not make the playoffs, so they decided to trade him to the Dolphins, and that's when he suffered a knee injury and never played the same and never really, again, lived up to that 10-year contract extension. And the last quarterback on this list is Michael Vick. He got a 10-year extension worth $130 million, signed in 2004. He was 24 at the time, so the idea that he would play from an elite level from 24 to 34 was I guess the idea, and I would have seen him playing through that contract, the whole entire of the contract, if not for him dealing with the whole dog thing, going to jail. So he did not finish that contract, but if any quarterback on that list of who signed the 10-year plus, he would have been the one who would have actually done it. But the reason I brought up all those quarterbacks is, as you can tell, not a single one actually finished out their 10-year plus extensions. So do I think Pat Mahomes is going to finish that 10-year plus extension? Probably not. It'll probably get restructured, year 6 into that deal, year 7 into that deal, because he'll be what? So he'll be 36 at 10, so 35, 34. 33, 32 is when they restructure or do something. Or God forbid he falls off or gets injured or gets replaced by the next great. I mean, who knows? I don't think he's going to play throughout the entire 10-year contract. Again, it probably will get restructured or something. But, okay, good for Pat Mahomes. Getting the bag. Going to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks for a while. And actually, I'm not sure if that 10-year deal is actually as bad as it sounds. I don't know. I think making $50 million a year is a lot for a quarterback. And it's going to be a lot of money for anyone. But for Pat Mahomes, or at least for the Chiefs, Pat Mahomes is the highest paid quarterback in 2 years for probably 3 years into his deal, 4 years into his deal. And then someone else becomes the highest paid quarterback. Someone else gets a buttload more money. Someone else I think that this deal is a lot for the next 5 years. But after that, I think you'll look at it as like the base or like the top tier salaries for quarterbacks. It won't be an outstanding, highest paid player of all time in any sport type deal. It'll just be like, he's paid $50 million a year because he's a good quarterback. And then think about the last few years of that deal. And I know I talked about a restructure, but in the last few years of that deal, we may even look at it as a steal for Pat Mahomes. Paying him $50 million while the next quarterback, or 40 something, I don't know what it is, but paying him that while the next other quarterback out there is making 55, 60. God knows what the salary cap's going to look like in 10 years. So or quarterback salaries for that matter. So someone brought up to me this statistic, if you will. 8 out of the last 10 seasons, the team with the highest paid quarterback has not made the playoffs. Now, when I heard that, I was shocked because that doesn't sound right. You'd think that the highest paid quarterback every year would at least be good enough to take his team to the wild card, but no. In fact, 8 out of the 10 quarterbacks in the last 10 seasons have not made the playoffs. Well, the highest paid quarterbacks have not made the playoffs. And again, that shocked me. Now I'm going to go through the list, right? So this list includes Matthew Stafford in 2019, which I don't know if that's a surprise to me now that I'm looking at that name. Jimmy Garoppolo in 2018, Joe Flacco in 2017, Drew Brees in 2015, Eli Manning in both 2014 and 2013, and Mark Sanchez in 2011, which I had no idea that at any point he was the highest paid or had the highest cap hit of any quarterback in the league. So that's crazy to me. And then Donovan McNabb in 2010, one of those quarterbacks from the extension list. So, do I think that this is going to, be the same for Pat Mahomes? No. No, I think he's going to make the playoffs for a multitude of years over the next 12 years of his contract. I think he's going to make it probably 8 out of the next 12 times, if not 9 of the next 12 times. I think he is good enough to will his team to the playoffs no matter what, while these other quarterbacks were good quarterbacks. But after I said the list, you could kind of see why maybe their teams didn't make the playoffs. For them, I see them having to have a full team around them rather than Pat Mahomes being that guy that can will the team around him to the playoffs. So, we've talked about the highest paid quarterback in the league, the highest paid athlete of all time currently. What about quarterback in the league who's getting paid almost nothing and may be able to bring his team a multitude of success? And his quarterback is Cam Newton. So Cam Newton signed with the Patriots for, and I don't really have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's about $1 million base salary, $7 million in incentives. But I'm pretty sure these incentives are impossible to hit incentives. I don't really think he's going to get that $7 million. I think that the incentives are like MVP, 50 touchdowns, 16-0, something crazy. Maybe I need to go back and look into it, but I don't think he's going to make that money. Now, you're Cam Newton. You're going to pay $1 million to go play for the Patriots. If you're the Patriots, you're ecstatic. I mean, this guy's going to come in for dirt nothing, and he has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove that he's still got it. He wants to prove that he could still be the MVP caliber quarterback that he's been in the past. I love that Cam Newton. I would want that Cam Newton on my team. I was surprised. Well, I mean, as a Texans fan, I'd much rather have Deshaun Watson. But what I'm saying is, if you're a team out there like the Jags or the Broncos, I mean, I know Drew Lock is a promising young quarterback. But still, if you're the Jags, the Broncos, any like the Chargers, any team, I mean, they still got Herbert, but any team that really needed a starting level caliber quarterback, you could have gone out and gotten Cam Newton. And I would have loved that signing on any of those teams. But now the Patriots have Cam Newton. And I think he's going to be extremely successful in that offense. Now, I'm not going to say he's Tom Brady. He's not. They're going to have to build a different game plan for him. And he definitely comps to Tom Brady in some ways, but again, he's not. He's just not Tom Brady. That offense isn't going to look the same as it has for the last decade. It's going to be different. To me, I think that him being a mobile quarterback, as well as built like a linebacker, is going to bring a dimension to that offense that we haven't seen in many years past. The league is trending towards mobile quarterbacks anyways, so now the Patriots get to upgrade their offense and bring it into the more new age, new century. Or new decade, I should say. So, Cam Newton. I think that one, he's going to help that team because he has a chip on his shoulder. He's going to be a good player. His ceiling is MVP caliber. And I don't think he's played with receivers as good. Well, his best receiver during his MVP season was an old Steve Smith. And now I love Steve Smith, but I'd rather take maybe an old Julian Edelman, who's probably better than Steve Smith. And then you've got guys like N'Keal Harry and Mohamed Sanu on that team. Cam has proven that he's great with pass catching running backs. You've got Sony Michel and James White on that team. He used Christian McCaffrey really well. Why can't he use those guys really well? So now as you start to see all the pieces he has around him, you can kind of get the idea, or you can kind of vibe with my sense that he may be successful. He's got one of the best coaches of all time in Bill Belichick. And then another thing that I like, that I think is a sneaky benefit to the Patriots, is that defense has always struggled against mobile quarterbacks. Or not always. At least last year they struggled against mobile quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. So you're telling me that if the defense gets to go against the offense and see them during practice, week in and week out, see how Cam operates, and they start to get a better feel of the run of a running quarterback, you're telling me that defense, which was already elite, isn't going to get even better? Or you're telling me they're not going to... They were already a top 5 defense last year. Now I think they could be a top 3 defense, if not top 1 or 2. They're going to play out of their minds this year. And if you thought that the Patriots were going to tank for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, or God, I forget the third quarterback on that list, is supposed to be pretty good. But if you think they were going to tank, you're wrong. Bill Belichick was never going to lose on purpose. They might have had Stidham in, but they were still going to win 8 games with that defense and with Bill with play calling. So this is good for the Patriots, and it's good for Cam. And the reason it's good for Cam is because after this season, and if they do well, which I think they will, he's going to get a bag. Because the Patriots, they're going to be at a point where they're going to either have to go with the 4th best quarterback in that draft, Jarrett Stidham, or Cam Newton coming off that season that he had, if it's good. And you're telling me the Patriots front office are going to go any other direction other than to pay Cam and make him their franchise quarterback? No. I think he's a definite lock to do well next season and to become the franchise quarterback for at least 2-3 years after that. Or Cam Newton goes somewhere else and gets a bag and plays for maybe Jacksonville if Gardner Minshew doesn't do well, or again the Broncos if Drew Lock doesn't do well, or I don't know. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that I look at and I think that Cam Newton could replace them, but I don't think that the teams have given up on those quarterbacks yet. Like Sam Darnold, young quarterback. He hasn't really been given much of a chance to win. That Jets offensive line is horrible. I don't think any quarterback could be super successful on that team, regardless with Adam Gase as the head coach. But I think that Cam Newton would do better on the Jets than Sam Darnold would, but I don't think that would make them a contender per se. I think that putting Cam Newton on the Patriots makes them a contender, but I don't think putting him on those other teams do. But you guys get my point. All right, so on to some, I guess, funnier news So I'm going to talk about the Redskins. So I have the Redskins name change odds in front of me. But as of recent, there's been some other news that have come out about the Redskins, and I kind of want to do a separate video on that because I still need to do a lot more research on it. So expect a video of that coming out after this podcast. But for now, let's just go through their name changes. They're changing from the Washington Redskins to, who knows, the Washington TBDs. And I have the odds in front of me, and I'm going to read them out to you, and you will have a laugh with me on some of these, and then maybe think that some of these other names are pretty good ones. So the Redskins name change. You've got the Trumps and Snowflakes at 500-1, which, it's just is what it is. And then you've got the Hogs at 50-1, Arlington's at 25-1, Renegades at 22-1, the Jeffersons at 20-1, the Redhawks at 15-1, the Kings and Roosevelts at 12-1, the Monuments, Memorials, and Americans at 10-1, the Capitals at 9-1, the Veterans at 8-1, the Lincolns at 6-1, the Presidents at 5-1, and our top 2 odds are the Generals at 4-1 and the Red Tails at 3-1. So, some of these names are good. I like some of these names. Some of them are goofy. Some of them are good. But I think that my favorite names out of this list is I could see the Red Tails, the 3-1 odds. I could see that being the Washington Red Tails. I can see them being the Washington Generals as well. But I think the name I like the most is the Renegades on this list. I don't know why. I just think that it would be a cool concept. I think they could do a lot with that name. The Washington Renegades, I don't know. I think they could do a lot with that, but I guess we'll just all have to sit around and wait and see what happens. Hopefully, and training camps in what is today? I think 11 days, something like that. And they have to have a new name by then. So I guess all we have to do is just sit back, wait, and hopefully they pick something good. And hopefully it's not trash. All right, so that was the NFL segment for today. So we've got some news on the NBA, and by news on the NBA, I mean the NBA is coming back, and I could not be happier. Genuinely could not be happier. Love basketball, love watching it, love my Rockets. But if you don't know how the NBA is coming back, let me explain it to you. So they're going to this bubble in Orlando, and every team gets a segment of hotels. And presumably, once they get there, they have to quarantine for a set amount of days. And also, so they basically stay in their own rooms. They're not really allowed to go out, do much. And they're only allowed to practice with their teammates. I mean, if they have COVID, they have to, quarantine for like 10 or something days as well. But for those who haven't, you quarantine for a few weeks inside your room, only going to practice and back. And then after that, you get to go out and enjoy the whole bubble, which sounds like it's going to be amazing. It sounds like they've got caterers, food. They have everything. They're going to have entertainment, all of it for these players. But for now, you got to quarantine. But as for how the actual league is going to run, they're going to play 3 preseason games. And I think this is July 22nd to 24th is when it's going to start. They're going to play 3 preseason games. Then they're going to go on to 8 regular season games until the final standings have been decided, which I'll explain in a minute, and until they get to the playoffs. And then the playoffs are going to happen as per usual, or at least we hope. And I'll get to that in a minute. But so let me explain the teams that are going to show up to the bubble. It's not going to be all 30 NBA teams as many as some would want, I guess, but it's going to be 22 teams. And I'm going to name the teams from each conference, and you're going to see a disparaging in terms of the numbers. So you've got the East with the Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, Nets, Magic, and Wizards. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams from the East, while you got 13 from the West. You've got the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Trailblazers, Pelicans, Kings, Spurs, and Suns. Now, why are there so many teams from the West as compared to the East, you may ask? Well, they invited the teams that were close to getting into the playoffs, or like close to the 8th and 7th seed. So if you had a chance within 8 games to make it to the playoffs, you're coming to the bubble. So in the East, the locks were the Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, while the not locks were the Nets, Magic, and Wizards. So 2 out of those 3 teams are going to make the playoffs. Now, in the West, the locks were the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks. Or no, the Mavericks aren't a lock. It's just the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets. And the teams that aren't a lock are the Mavericks, Grizzlies, Trailblazers, Pelicans, Kings, Spurs, and Suns. So that's going to be a tight race in the West, considering that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 more open spots in the West for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, while in the East there's 2 spots for 3. So in the East, I mean, some teams are almost all their players are already dropping, like the Nets. A lot of them aren't even going to the bubble. So, the East playoff race is just whatever. Like, nobody cares. I could give less of a shit what team goes in and whatnot. But in terms of the West, it's going to actually be a tight race. The Mavericks and Grizzlies are really close to each other. The Trailblazers and Pelicans. I mean, the NBA is going to try to help out Zion as much as he can to get into the playoffs. I mean, they already gave him the Pelicans, the easiest schedule coming back. They want that man in the playoffs. They want that revenue. So, and then you got the Kings, Spurs, and Suns. So if I think the teams that aren't going to make it, probably not. The Spurs, probably not. Kings, probably not. Suns, probably not. Mavericks, probably. And then it's between the Grizzlies, Trailblazers, and Pelicans. And as I said before, the NBA loves Zion Williamson. The media loves Zion Williamson. So if you're going to tell me that you think the Pelicans aren't going to make the playoffs, yeah, you might be right. You might be right because they might not play well enough to make the playoffs, but the NBA is damn sure going to try to get them in the playoffs. All right, so here's some notable players sitting out of the NBA restart. And I say notable as the first guy on the list is Trevor Ariza for the Trailblazers. So maybe I should adjust that to almost notable, maybe notable. You got Davis Bertans from the Wizards. Avery Bradley from the Lakers, which I think is a big loss for the Lakers. They did replace him with somebody who I'll get to in a minute, but Bradley was a playmaker and a defender for that team, and he was at least a crucial part of that offense. So I don't know how they're going to rebound off losing him. You've got Willie Cauley-Stein in the Mavericks, Wilson Chandler from the Nets, whatever. DeMarcus Cousins is sitting out. I mean, he's a free agent, so, he's probably sitting out anyways. I mean, maybe some teams were calling, but he said for the betterment of his health, he's going to sit out. Got Spencer Dinwiddie with the Nets. He actually got coronavirus was going to wait and get tested again to see if he got over it. Still had it, so he decided, nah, NBA bubble is not for me. DeAndre Jordan saw that his teammate got it. He also said, nope, not for me. He's not going. A huge loss to the Pacers. Victor Oladipo, he's working on his rehab. He's going to try to get to 100% again so he can return to next season 100%. But that's a huge loss for the Pacers. They need Oladipo. He's their premier star, if not one of the premier stars on that team. And then lastly, Thabo Sefolosha, however you say it, on the Rockets. So we replaced him with somebody, and I'll get to that in a moment. So actually, Luke Mbah a Moute was his replacement. And then I'm going through the list of players who replaced some of these guys. So Luke replaced Thabo, Sefolosha. And I think that's a pretty comparable replacement. I think that Luke is just as good as a defender, if not better, than Thabo. They both struggle from shooting threes anyways, so it's kind of one guy out the door, one guy in rotation kind of thing. It's fine with me. Henny God, J.R. Smith to the Lakers. Love that. I love it. I'm glad to see him back in the NBA, and especially back with Bron in LA. Like it's gonna be really fun to watch. I'm actually gonna. Well, I'm already going to tune into every single game that's going on, but I'm definitely going to tune in to watch JR pull some threes. You got Trey Burke going to the Mavericks, whatever signing, and then you've got Justin. And then so these three are all Nets players replacing the previous Nets players. Justin Anderson, I don't really care, but these two players, really excited about seeing come back to the NBA. Jamal Crawford, Jay Smooth, Jay Crossover, loved him. Can't wait to see him come back. And then you've got Michael Beasley going back to the Nets. I'm not sure. It was reported that he signed, but there's been some. I probably should have re-looked back into this. I'm not gonna lie, but I think he tested positive for corona, so I'm not sure if you're actually letting him go to Orlando. I hope he is. I probably should have looked that up right before I recorded this, but you know what? That's okay. Sometimes we're gonna make mistakes, but that's all right. If Michael Beasley's back and playing for the Nets, I will be ecstatic. If he's not, that is a tragedy. All right, so a lot of people have concerns over will the NBA finish? When the season starts, and I guess that could also go towards baseball as well, which I'll get into later. But will the NBA finish once it's restarted? I hope so. I mean, for my sake, I really hope so. But could I see it stopping? Yeah, I could see a bunch of people getting corona, not feeling safe, wanting to go home, and then the NBA just having to shut down because the majority or a significant portion of the players have gotten coronavirus. So, I mean, that would suck. But also, if the league does go on and you get to like the finals and it's the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Bucks, and God forbid Giannis or LeBron gets COVID right before the game, or even on a bigger scale, Game 7. Gets it right before Game 7. What do? Do you postpone it? Do you postpone the finals? Do you postpone the Game 7? What do you do in that scenario? And I don't think the NBA is prepared for that. In fact, I think the NBA is hoping that some of these players get COVID during the preseason stuff or regular season or now, so they get it out of the way. But hopefully the bubble works. Hopefully the idea that you bring all these players in, get them quarantined, get them all safe. You get rid of the COVID scare. You play some basketball, make some money, get a ring. Hopefully. I mean, that's what I'm hoping. I bet you that's what every single player there is hoping. Get a paycheck, maybe get a ring. So, you know what? I hope that doesn't happen. I hope LeBron doesn't get corona. I hope nobody gets corona in the finals. But, you just got to think about it. You got to look at the possibilities. So, here's to hoping that the NBA bubble doesn't stop. And actually, I actually have the regulation or rules or guidelines, whatever happens when an NBA player gets COVID. So I guess I'll read that to you just so you can get a little deeper understanding. So any player who tests positive will be required to quarantine for a minimum of 7 days. And any player who contracts the coronavirus or gets injured can be replaced, but the replaced player will not be eligible to return to the Orlando bubble. So realistically, all those players that opted out and got replaced were some of the best guys on the market. So it's going to be hard to think that if Anthony Davis gets injured or coronavirus and he leaves, who are you going to replace him with? I mean, somebody on the market who's been playing overseas or something, who, if they come over from overseas, they're going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks. I don't see, once you got your squad going into the bubble, and I know they allowed you to bring extra players, G League players, so you can have a 17-man roster. But once you go into that bubble, anything that bad happens to your team is a huge loss. I don't think that there's really any recovery from someone who gets injured in the bubble, or even coronavirus in the bubble. Oh, and so on some funnier news, I guess, about this. So I don't know if y'all have seen the food that they've been serving to some of these players. I'm going to have a picture up right now of, what was his name? Troy Daniels' Instagram post of his food from the bubble. And if you are not watching the podcast on YouTube, let me explain to you what's on this tray. You've got pita chips, watermelon slices, a salad, and a bread roll. And I think some jam and some butter. Delicious. It all looks like airline food to me. But it was reported later, though, that they did come in with some pasta and some chicken. So, I mean, these players are getting fed. But I guess to their standard, I don't know if it's fed well. So they're going to have to go through this for, a little while before they can get out and be eating all that good Orlando bubble food. And the funny thing to me, or at least thinking about this, is do you think LeBron is going to be eating that bubble food? Do you think you really think he's not going to be getting some personal chefs to be whipping up something to bring it to his door instead of that? I can guarantee that's what he's going to be doing. But yeah, so funny stuff. Bubble food, pretty bad. It is what it is. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break. I don't have my MLB script in front of me. Pretty funny. So just give me a second. I'll be back in a clap. All right, I'm back. And not only am I back, but baseball is back. The season is not going to be 162 games as it normally is, but rather a 60-game, extremely condensed season that will run from the last week of July to the last week of September. Now, with this 60-game season, there's going to be a lot of different caveats. The first small one, the new trade deadline is August 31st. And then there's also a couple cool new rule introductions to the league. So one of the most simple ones that I can explain is that now there will be a universal DH within the AL and NL. So now we won't, and this is something I'm kind of excited for because I love seeing DHs hit because the whole role on the team is designated hitter. That is what they do. And pitchers' whole role in the team is supposed to be pitching. I've always hated, it's cool seeing a pitcher, rip a double or get a good hit or something like that. But realistically, I would like to see the hitters hit and the pitchers pitch. And as a pitcher, I'd probably be excited about this, knowing that all I have to go out there and do is my job, is do what I've been training through my whole life, is just throw baseballs, pitch well, rather than having to go out there and hit when you really don't want to. And now this is great for I guess baseball in general because now there won't be those random guaranteed outs, in the 9 spot in some leagues. Now every lineup is going to have hitters from top to bottom, or hopefully hitters from top to bottom. And another little rule change is in extra innings, the last out from your previous at-bats will start at second base. So let's say you're the top or bottom of the 9th guy. You're still tied. You get out. And then nobody, you're the last out on your team. And nobody else, you don't get a run, so the game's still going. Well, so when you go into the top of the 10th, the last out from the top of the 9th starts on second. I think that is a really, really cool little rule that they added in. It'll make those little extra innings seem even closer to that one hit, one pitch, one something away from being the end of the game. Did I think it's really necessary? No. Do I think it's something that's a little cool, a little addition? Yeah, I do. I can't really see the real purpose behind it other than getting the extra innings to just move faster and getting baseball to just end on time. But yeah, cool rule. Cool little extra something. But so a 60-game season in comparison to a 162-game season is a lot different to me. Obviously there's 102 games missing, but I think it's now every game is more important than during a 162-game season. There are games during the year throughout that long season that you don't, as a baseball fan, you want to watch all 162 games, but you're going to miss a couple. And then are you going to care that you missed a couple? Probably not, because you got one on tomorrow, the next day, the next couple days. You've got one almost every other day, if not every day. Baseball to watch all the time. And for teams, you could go out there and lose a series, and it wouldn't matter, because you've got plenty more games throughout the season. Let me bring you in to what at least my thought is that of why these games are so important. and why you have to start out well. The Washington Nationals won the World Series last year, and they started the season 19-31, the first 50 games. You can't tell me that if a team starts 19-31 this season, they're going to make it to the playoffs and then win the whole thing. They're just not. They're going to be so far down the standings, that there's no way they're going to get into that wild card spot or something like that. So every game matters this season. Every single game. Every game matters. There's not a single game that you're going to watch that isn't going to mean something. And I love that. I think that's great. I think in football, every game matters. I think in basketball, for the most part, and maybe 82 games is a lot. Maybe some games don't matter, but a lot of those games do matter. In baseball, it seems like a lot of games don't matter. So I guess I'm really excited for baseball to return in a shortened fashion, so that I know for a fact that I'm watching very, very important games every day. All right, so I'm going to end this podcast just talking a little bit about why I think that baseball, at least the clutchness of baseball in those final innings and moments, is crazier than that of basketball and football. So I listened to someone else talk about this, and I think they said it great. I think I agreed with them in every sense. So in basketball, you can hit a game-winning shot. You can hit a game-winning free throw, get a game-winning block, something like that. And it's great. It's one play at the end of the game. And I guess you can kind of predict when it's going to happen. If someone has the ball, they're down 2, they're going to shoot a 3. Or they're going to try to tie it up or do something. In football, again, score-wise, you can kick a field goal for the win, house a punt, house a kickoff, block a kick, do something. There's a multitude of things you can do. But those are all plays that you need to make, that you have to guarantee that you can make. It's a single play. But in baseball, it could be the bottom of the ninth, no one on, and every single pitch that is thrown could be the last pitch of baseball. Any swing that is swung could be the last swing of the game. There's just constant motion in this not knowing what could happen next that could end the game or anything. That excites me more than knowing what the other teams have to do to win. Obviously, in baseball, you could just say, just hit a home run. But you don't know what of the many pitches that pitcher's going to pitch. You don't know if that guy's going to go for a home run, if he's going to go for a single, go for a double. Like in baseball, there's just so many more question marks towards the end of the game when something happens. So much more suspense than there is during a football and basketball game. Now, doesn't mean I like to watch baseball more than those two sports. I wouldn't directly say that. But that's just my little tidbit on why I like baseball a little bit, at least the clutch moments, a little bit more than basketball and football. Now, this is the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know when the next one's going to be out. I'm going to hopefully put that out soon. My name is Blake Bartlett. This has been BS Takes. Thank you so much.